the review. Is that recording? Yes. Okay, so when you are, what is your question precisely? How many reviews they should be playing at each bit of the book?
Exactly.
So I think obviously it depends how much practice they're prepared to do. Like, you know, your kind of gold star families may be like, oh, we play every piece every day.
Okay.
This doesn't happen very often. I think I've probably had that about 3 times in my career. And unless that's the kind of teacher that you're aiming to be, you know, that's not normally what people request. Also, I think the danger with that, once you get to sort of the minuets type place, if they know that they're going to play every single piece, they're not going to work on any of them, because it's going to take like, you know, recording tempo, it takes 25 minutes to play all of book 1, but that's not really reasonable for most young kids, and they're going to need a break. So let's say that would take about 40 minutes to play all of book 1, and that's with just once through. So for me, I would rather also that they are picking some sort of theme. Like let's think about the bow hold in every piece, and then if the bow hold is going dodgy, that they're starting again that piece and seeing if they can play the flag game, holding it all the way through correctly, rather than thinking like they have to get through the whole book, or they have to get through all of the odd numbers, or all of the even numbers, or all of the staccato pieces, or all of the legato pieces, or whatever. So I think for me, I'm more about the focus on the teaching to the priority and what that priority is, rather than trying to get through a tick list of the number of pieces. Having said that, I do think there are kind of minimum that is going to be a problem if they're not doing it. So do you know how many pieces there are in book 1?
Can I count?
Off the top of your head? Yes, if you'd like to.
With the twinkles being 1.
No, with the twinkles separately.
6.
Because that would be a piece to them. If you said, let's play a piece, Dr. Suzuki, they would have played 1 piece, right?
Okay.
Let's do it out loud.
6. So it will be busy, stop, stop. Then turn to the run.
Nope.
It's the 1, right? Okay. Dr. Suzuki.
Yeah, you can call them whatever you want. I'm not attached to my names. I can see you translate it. Is that what Lucy calls it?
Yokata. And then Run Jimmy. Then Figaro.
Okay, nice.
And then Fata then a caterpillar.
Yeah.
Then Twinkle Theme.
Good. Just to pause, the only thing I think about Run Jimmy, I was brought up with Run Pony. Lots of people still use it, but the reason I like Stop Pony is because there is a staccato first and third, 1, 2, 3, 4th note. Whereas Run Pony, if you play it how you say it, it's all legato.
Yeah, true. Okay.
Same with everybody down, up is legato sounds.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas everybody pop, or everybody stop, or busy, stop, whatever.
Okay.
All of those things, something that's got a pop sound is a nice staccato.
Okay. So that's 5, then Twinkle Theme.
Yep.
Then Light and Grow, Song of the Wind, Go Tell It Early, Open With Susan, May Song, and Long Ago, Allegro, then Perpetual Motion, and Allegretto, Anatino, Etude, Minuet, 1, 2, 3, Happy Farmer, Gavotte. So
very good.
5, 5, 5, 2, 5, 5, 5, 5, 27. 22.
Because there are 17 in the book, and then you add the 5 twinkle variations.
22.
Very good, very quickly done. So, if you are thinking about a kid who's at, let's talk about the 3 kind of sections of book 1.
Yeah.
So while you're in the folk song section, someone like Riker, when he was on Go Tell That Roadie, for example, probably was managing 2 twinkles and 1 review.
Okay.
It's not ideal, because then it means in a week of practice, also given that he was not practicing more than 3 or 4 times, mostly, it means that it's likely he's only played his review pieces once each week.
Yeah.
And that doesn't really give you, like, if we think about what are the reasons for review?
To master the other, like to get the other pieces better and make it easier for the pieces that are coming.
Wonderful. And also?
Okay.
So you're thinking about mastery of the techniques in the piece.
Yeah.
Good. You're thinking that those techniques will help make the newer pieces easier. Excellent.
Exactly. And for them to start with the easier thing, so they will not be discouraged when they get to the main piece. That is
good. Yeah. So like enjoyment.
Yeah, enjoyment.
Pleasure in playing. Yeah. Good.
There's more. Okay.
There is more, but you can just tell me.
So make it easier, master of the previous pieces.
Think about what we were talking about before. Why is it a tool to have an old piece that they know well?
To get the technique that they are working on better for this new piece.
The technique and also their
posture.
Yeah, exactly. So you have the opportunity, because they're not thinking about fingerings, bowings, rhythm, pitch, what's happening, they can just do it. You have the opportunity for them to really focus on anything that you give them.
Okay.
So tone, intonation, posture, the techniques in the piece, all of those things are possible in that review that would be impossible in a new piece.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And in a more like traditional setup, you might use scales and arpeggios for that. But when you're talking about a 5-year-old, they generally find scales and arpeggios quite boring, and so you're not going to get the same focus from them.
Yeah.
And like open string exercises, this is not like motivating for them.
Yeah. Okay. It makes sense because the piece is easier now for them. You can give them any challenge.
Exactly. So you can make your requirements not for the standard of the piece. Well, this is always difficult language-wise. Not for the level, like achievement level of the piece, but for the quality of how they're playing it, much higher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So then that's not possible if you're doing it once a week. Really, all they're doing is remembering how it goes, and that's what a lot of parents think review is for. To remember the old pieces, so you can play them in groups, so you can play them in a concert. Like, this is not,
Okay. So
they kind of miss the point a bit, and we have to remind them about that all the time. But I think that, ideally, if you could get your students at that kind of level, like Go Turn Up Radio, Come Little Children, to be playing 2 reviews and 2 twinkles, and also to like have the idea that the twinkle variations are like kind of separate from review because they're so easy and they're so important, and they practice so many core skills. You don't want to just mix them up so that by the time they get to the end of book 1 they're playing twinkles once every 4 days or 5 days. You want them to play them every practice.
Yeah. So they will review 2 twinkles at least, and then 2 pieces.
Yeah. So then if they're doing, let's like talk about a kind of very averagely committed family. If they're practicing 3 or 4 times a week and they are rotating those review pieces, they're going to get all of the twinkles 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, exactly.
1 or 2 times a week, and then the review pieces they're going to have. Depends where you put twinkle theme. If it's a review or a twinkle, so it can be either. But like Lightly Row, Song of the Wind, Go Turn Up Roadie, they've got those 3 reviews. So if they've done 3 practices and they're playing 2 of them, they're going to practice them at least twice in that week, and hopefully 3 times in that week. And this is like the minimum standard that you're hoping you would have in your studio. So then, the kids who are practicing 5 times a week will have played those pieces most of their practices.
Okay.
So then if we think about if they're
so
in
the ideal would be
all of them at that level.
All of them.
I mean, it's
yeah,
only,
exactly. It's not too
I mean,
much.
I think all of the twinkles is quite a big ask for a young child at that level. I rarely ask them to play all of their twinkles because also, it does take sort of 10 to 12 minutes by the time they've actually, they're probably not playing them really up to speed yet. They're not, they're probably still making the occasional mistake and having to start again.
Yeah.
Their focus is not very high. They're probably 5, maybe 6. They're learning all those skills. So I think that to ask them to play through all the twinkles either you end up with that like twinkle marathon kind of single-mindedly, what I'm doing is just getting through to the next thing, and they're not thinking about anything apart from just finishing, which is missing the point. Or it's taking so much of practice that then they've got very little reserve left for the rest of what they're actually doing. So for me, I would think like 3 twinkles each practice is brilliant, because then they can do them every other practice. They've done each of them.
Okay. This is all for helping the parents and the kids to get more, I don't know, enjoyment, fun while they practice. There was this game that you talked about like a ball with technique things that I have to say, and then a ball with the twinkles, and they get to choose one of the twinkles and then one like posture. And then they play one and then another variation, and then we can do 3. And they
Brilliant.
will not be as like you have to do 3. And they're like, oh, okay. They have things.
Exactly.
To think about.
And I think early book 1, it's fine to have a load of different things that they're thinking about.
Okay.
Because they're kind of so close to being pre-twinkle that they're like, that it's unlikely that they've got one big problem they need to sort out. Unless it's someone like, I mean, Albie is not, he's like more advanced than that. But you know, if you think about this, like he's got a really good bow hold. This is what he needs to think about. So if he picked out, think about your bow hold, then think about your violin position, then think about your staccato, it would be more confusing for him than like, okay, each practice we're teaching to the priority and you're going to think about this violin position. So let's play different games to keep that in mind, rather than different things to make it a game.
So if it is, if the problem is that they have a specific thing they have to work on, we will think about games about that specific.
Exactly.
About the priority, right? But if it is something that in general is okay, it's just for them to like master. I don't know. It's like
to improve everything. Like if they're generally well set up, and they might, you know, their bow hold might go a bit straight. Their violin position might be a bit droopy. They might be playing a bit out of tune. They might be, you know, like Riker. He doesn't have a thing. But that there is a problem with, but of course when he loses focus, weird things happen. So that kind of game, like let's think about this, lucky dip would be really great for him. But for Albie it would be like, okay, so what do we need? We just need to focus on this violin position. So what we need is, okay, let's play the flag game for the first piece. So if just for the benefit of the video, if you're playing and the violin position has gone wrong, you wave the flag and you have to start again. So then by the time you get to the end of that piece, you know you've played it with the perfect posture all the way through. And then the second one might be, you know, in the practice packs there are the little animals with the tongue. It's basically the same thing, but they won't think it is. That mum is there like right next to his face with the tongue, and like it's just gonna make him lick his nose if it goes wrong, and then he has to start again. And then the third piece might be playing with the backing track, and you play musical statues, and so if the violin position goes, you hit pause on the recording, and then they're like, oh, I messed it up, I have to start again. You know, like all the different ways to keep the same thing in mind. So I think then if we think about a child who's in that kind of middle section of book 1, do you want to write any of that down?
It was just writing down, like that was the minimum, but like a good practice.
So the ideal in book 1 is always going to be everything. But I think it's not unrealistic. If you're on Oh Come Little Children, there are quite a lot of kids who will play all of their twinkles. Maybe not all of their twinkles, but certainly want to play Lightly Rose, Song of the Wind, Go Tell Aunt Rhody. And then maybe one twinkle. I would encourage them to do more twinkles, because one obviously means, unless even if they're practicing every day, they've only done one twice in a week. And most kids who practice every day are counting their group lesson and their private lesson, as a practice. So that's actually 5. Like when you really dig into the practice, you find interesting things. Like people say, oh yeah, we practice every day. And I say, but how do you fit it in when you're at the hub until 6 o'clock? Oh, well, obviously coming to the hub counts as practice. Oh, okay, well it doesn't actually. It's a different thing, but it's still brilliant. Like if you're playing your violin every day, and when you're not here learning, you're practicing at home, that's great, like wonderful, but it's not 7 practices every week.
So I'll keep saying at home.
Or just ask when you're asking about practice. Every few weeks, how was practice this week? Yeah, it was good. How many did you manage to do? Oh, we did 4. Or yeah, every day. Do you mean every day like you practiced at home every day, or are you counting when you come to group, or are you counting when you come to your lesson?
Okay.
Like not in an accusatory way.
Yeah.
Just checking. Just like let's understand a little bit more about what the parent perceives to be practicing every day.
Okay. And regarding that, what you're saying, I see that every lesson you feel something.
Yes.
Right? When you say they had 4 practices,
Yeah.
it's 4 practices when they did everything, like the twinkles and the pieces.
I'm not asking that much detail every time because you would end up spending 5 minutes of every lesson talking about it. But I tend to try and generally understand. Are you getting through everything I've asked you to do? Like I know that Riker is generally not getting through everything I've asked and generally not practicing every day. Well, certainly never practicing every day. Whereas I have other students where I don't even have to ask them very often, are you getting through everything? Because I know that if I set too much, they'll come and they'll say, it was too much to do a whole page of sight reading every day this week.
Okay, yeah.
But it's just generally like, I think for me, like once every half term, I try and just make sure that we've had a slightly longer chat about what's happening so that I just kind of have that map in my head of which students are.
And how
where.
does that,
I'm going to show you.
look like?
We have recently
Because I tried to do, I did a sheet thing on Excel about that, like I would put the name of the kid and then I would put posture, ball hold, recordings, and then I would ask, but the thing is it's a group lesson, so it's like 4 parents or 5 parents that I have to ask and it takes a long time.
Yeah.
And I see that you do that in individual, but it's not a thing that I can do
Yeah.
because you don't have. But I think it's good for me to have that as well. Mostly because when they have to move groups, when I don't move them, they be asking why, and then I can show them like.
This is exactly one of the reasons that I started doing that is because I really felt strongly that the kids who were not making the progress they wanted to make, mostly their parents felt it was either that they just weren't very good at it, or it was that I was in some way holding them back for some reason they didn't understand. And actually, I was like, no, you're just not practicing as much as everybody else who's moving on. And like, it's been very rare in my studio, like, so I am in control of the quality of teaching they're getting. Obviously, like across the hub, it's very different. But in my private teaching, it's been very rare to get a student who is doing the practice, putting in the effort, doing the listening, and not making roughly the same progress as others. And then there are always a few who find it super easy and make loads of progress with very little, or compared to the rate of progress, you know, that you look at, I've had students in the past that you look at them and you like, you must be practicing an hour and a half every day, like in book 8 kind of. And then actually when you talk to them, it's like, oh, I do 40 minutes every other day. And they just have incredible aptitude, focus, and
sometimes it's,
you know, there is definitely an innate, you know, talent is a difficult word, isn't it? But, you know, there's definitely something there. And like on the opposite side of the scale, some children who have the effort, put in the work, and don't get the results that they want to see, mostly for a while rather than forever. So I think that those things are really helpful to know, and also like as a comeback to a parent who's like, it's time to move on.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's time, you know, this is the equivalent. Like if they say something like, you know, we've got an etude for half a term, like nobody should be on a piece for half a term. Well, yes, I agree, but you've actually done 2 practices every week for that half term. So if compared to the children who are doing 6 practices a week, you've been on it for 2 weeks. Would you expect to practice to get past it in 2 weeks? It's a hard piece. No, you wouldn't.
I did had a difficult meeting with the mum this Friday, but it's like we did talk, and the thing we did talk on emails, and I explained to her. But then I did talk with my boss about it because it's like their parents just
There are
and
always
then
some of them.
They sent an email to my boss, like not knowing that I talked to my boss about it, just like trying to go over the situation. And my boss said, well, the perfect person to talk about is your teacher your child's teacher, right? And I did talk then to the dad because I do musicianship to the little girl, and he did tell me that she didn't practice. So I was like, it's not that she's not progressing, she is, and she's close to finish, but she could be on the next group like in January. She's not, because she's not practicing. She's progressing, but in a very slow pace. And mom was very upset about it because her friends went up very quickly. And I was like, yes, because
Yeah.
so it's not like, I understand the frustration, but I can't just put her on the other group, because then it'll be frustrated for her, because everyone
and then she'll be
everyone is like ahead of
upset.
her, and then she'll be like, she'll not fit.
Yeah.
She'll feel that she's not
Yeah.
doing. And well, but then she understood, but it was the same as the email, so it was like.
Yeah.
But then
I think thinking about that situation where you feel that you don't have time because there are 5 at a time.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I've done in group class, like when I used to teach in schools, and some of the teachers had a very different approach. Like one of the things I used to do is okay, has anybody in the room got 7-7? And I wouldn't be writing it down, but like this is 12, 15 kids, and like whoever had done it would like put their hands up and I'd be amazing, right? Who, and talking about like practice, who got 6, who got 5, who got 4, who got 3, and then I think below 3 I probably didn't ask, because it's like you don't want it. It's not a humiliation exercise. And then listening. Who listened every day? Who listened 6, 5, 4, 3? And you just see hands going up, and it just kind of gives you a little bit. You can't remember immediately each week who has done what, but it gives you an idea. And of course, sometimes they fib. But
Yeah, I did want to start with the sharks in the water game. And I have this student that he's listening every day, and I was like, great, but I can't start because there is students that they are not listening, so they will not know how to play. So I don't know if I should just do it, and they would feel like, oh, I really need to listen to like be able to play this game, or I should just wait for them to start.
They're not listening because they haven't got around to it yet, or because they're not being asked. They're not that level.
They are in that level, and I ask every week. But and I did say, okay, you can set up an alarm on your phone. You can do it when, I don't know, getting ready time for school or in the car, and most of them do it in the car. But because it's, and I did ask how much it takes, because if it just takes 5 minutes.
How much are these people driving?
Yeah.
Still, it's 2024. You live in London.
Exactly, but
get on public transport.
Well, they said on the car, and okay, if it does take like, I don't know, at least 30 minutes for you to get here, then it's okay, you can listen in the car. If it does less than that, then you have to listen at home, because then it will not ever
you'll never get past the
exactly.
little children.
So I did tell them that, and they are doing, but there are some parents that, oh I forgot, and like I can't start the game. I don't know if I should start the game.
I think you can do the game even with the kids that don't know it.
Okay.
Because also maybe and I would, when you play it, I would bear in mind, make sure that you're not making the wrong notes really obvious.
Yeah.
And then praise the kids who know immediately, who are like, because you'll see the ones who know it from listening and the ones who are copying the others.
Exactly.
And so if you're like, Josiah, well done, you knew exactly when I played that wrong note, don't say anything about the kids who don't know, but they will go home feeling like, I want to be that kid.
Yeah, okay.
And so maybe that will help.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I would play. I think it's a real dangerous, like the feeling that you have to teach to the bottom of a class is can be really strong, and it's really dangerous because it ignores the kids who are making the progress you want to see in everyone.
Exactly.
And so everything that, like all of that stuff we were talking about last week with multi-level groups, like everything you're trying to make the kids who are doing the most work feel recognised without making the children who are doing less work feel humiliated.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the balance, I think.
And it did help because they don't start with the real instruments like here. They do start with like a box one.
Yeah.
And when I gave the first real viola to one of the students, like Nori, she during the break she practiced like every day, and when she came, she knew everything, and I was like, that's amazing. And that was, I was afraid to give just to one, and I was like, oh, I don't know how the other ones will feel. But then it was good because
they're like, how can I get one?
Yeah, exactly. So I
Yeah.
was like, oh, maybe I should just start the game, and then it will happen the same.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. And if it doesn't damage the children who don't know the songs to play that game. They're still listening, they're still interacting, their group skills are improving, you know.
Yeah.
You get a good sense of pulse and rhythm from a piece that has some changed notes. You're still getting general musicianship skills.
Okay. Yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah. So I think to go back to the original question about how many reviews each student should be playing. So if you then think about, okay, we're thinking like as they are long ago, May song, those pieces. So then you might ask them to do 2 twinkles or 3 twinkles and 3 review pieces.
Okay.
So like roughly half of what they know each practice.
Okay. So then this is May song.
Well, just like during the traditional pieces, like the folk songs area of the area section of the book, that you're hoping that they would, roughly be playing half of their pieces each practice.
Would be half. That is 3, right? Because it's 6.
Yeah. Yeah, half the twinkles and half of the pieces.
Okay.
And then, as you go from allegro through to etude, the ideal would be to keep that ratio.
To stay the same?
To keep doing half.
Half, okay.
But by the time they're on etude, what piece is that? 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Like that's like piece number 17 or 18.
Yeah.
So for them to be playing 9 pieces each practice is unlikely.
Yeah.
So then I think I would go probably to 2 twinkles, because also they've done a lot of twinkles by now.
Okay. Yeah.
So 2 twinkles, and bearing in mind that at this point some of those will be in D or even in G.
Yeah.
You might give them a new, they might be playing da da dum da da dum da da dum da da dum to get the accents in the right place on allegretto. They might be playing da da dum
they
dum da da dum
the reviews instead.
So you can change the twinkles so that they are more connected to what they're learning.
Okay. Yeah. So
But I think at that stage, we are really hoping that they are playing roughly 70% of their practice is review. 70 to 75%. So by then they'll be doing a bit of sight reading.
The sight reading starts with "O Come Little Children."
Yeah, ish. Yeah.
So
just rhythm at that stage.
at that time, do we do sight reading every lesson, or do you have to do it every time at home instead?
Both, I would hope. Well, I think to do sight reading every lesson is unusual. But I would. With my students, I'm definitely asking to practice it every practice. It's part of what they do. I ask them to put it second, so they might be playing their 2 twinkles and then they do their sight reading and then they do their reviews, or then they do a box and then they play a review, or then they do another box and then they play the working piece and then they finish with reviews. Like twinkles to warm up, sight reading second so it doesn't get missed off the end, and then I'm relaxed about what they're doing at the end, unless they're in a situation where they need to really do that kind of set of pieces to help them with a specific thing. So if their staccato is dodgy and they're on etude, I don't want them to do Stop Pony and Dr. Suzuki, then sight reading, then etude,
Because
and then all the pieces that have staccato in them.
yeah.
Because those pieces will make it easier for the staccato in etude to be better. So it's kind of, it depends, like, but most of the time I'll say to the parents, I think most of my kids do that, like, structure, twinkles, sight reading, reviews, working piece.
Okay.
But the ones who don't like that order, or who need a little bit more of it being mixed up, I think it's more than just about if there is a problem, that means I want them to do a specific order, just to be super clear about that.
Okay.
So I think at that kind of point, like around the middle of book one, it's helpful to start using flashcards or like lucky dip cards. To have some sort of system for them to keep track of their reviews.
Okay.
So
it's just that it could be the list thing, we talk last week, like
so the list thing we'll talk about in a minute. They could have groups. They could say, okay, on first practice we do all of, like, make a group of pieces that work together well. Second practice we do this one, the third practice we do this one, and then that would be all of their pieces over 3 practices, and we hope that 6 practices a week happen, so we get through two of them every practice. I think that's a really good system. But if you're only doing 4 practices, you know that 2 of them won't be done. The other option is to have different ways to do it. So like sometimes you can just use the lucky dip. So you have, okay, like, let's do 5 today. Oh look, there are only 6 left. Can we do 6 today? Then we can finish. And they need 2 pots or envelopes or whatever. And so they start with, and I ask mine to make the twinkles a different colour. So if they want to do lucky dip twinkles, they choose the 2 that are green or whatever, and then they put them in the done pile. And then they have all of these reviews, and they say, okay, let's do 4 reviews today. And also at that level as well, allegretto, done. Perpetual motion, quite a lot. Come little children, probably they're going to mess up something, so they'll need to actually practice it a bit. So it's not just you do 4 reviews each practice. It's like, oh, okay, well, we've had all the short ones, so let's do 1 more. Oh, we've had lots of long ones, we can only do 3 today. Fine. But you know that they're not starting over until they've got through what they've done once at least.
So this is more for the talk to the parents, right?
And it can be really fun for them to make their lucky dip cards together, and, you know, decorate them and make them their own, and you know, some of the kids like to write them themselves and laminate them, and like all of that kind of crafty stuff that can be like get their motivation to use them higher. So I think that can be really good. Or they might do the groups of like, let's do the staccato pieces, let's do the legato pieces, let's find the pieces with an echo, let's do the pieces that are in DNA, on DNA, let's, you know, like whatever. And it also depends, when they're working pieces etude, they're going to do fewer reviews because they're going to have lots of boxes. And it's a really hard mountain piece. Like every mountain piece is going to mean the reviews drop off during that piece, or they do extra practice because it's review, because it's mountain piece time. You know, so most of them. Piece,
so if that's the case, imagining that we were doing etude, so it will be twinkle, sight reading, then the review, it could be, I don't know, perpetual motion, right, for the staccato, and then the boxes, and then working a little bit on the piece.
Yeah, I think 2 reviews minimum I would normally set, as well as the twinkles. I wouldn't want them to do less than that. Because also remembering the thing about keeping the motivation, that they're excited hopefully to conquer the mountain piece, but it's also really hard work. So you run out of energy and enthusiasm quite quickly. So you want to keep that balance of like, okay, let's play Dr. Suzuki and then any other twinkle you like. Let's do your sight reading, and then we'll play Song of the Wind, or, you know, muck about with something. Let's play staccato Go Tell That Roadie, even though it's not a staccato piece. Can we do it? And then perpetual motion, and then you're on the piece. Or like in etude, you might do Song of the Wind, and then the box that goes da 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 da, and then have a drink of water, or, you know, do 10 star dumps or whatever. And then, okay, another review and another box, and then another review and another box, and then let's try and play however much of it you can play at that point.
Okay, like intercalating, so it's not too hard.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so then by the time they get to the end of book one, once they're into the minuets and up to Gossec, so like we said, there are 22, but there are 17 pieces that are not twinkles. I would be hoping that they could play 6 reviews each practice, and
that's on the minuet.
by the like towards the end of the book. So it's probably by that point 1 twinkle and tonalisation, or just tonalisation.
Oh yes, okay. So towards the end of the book, it will be 6 reviews, but the twinkles 3 or all of them.
No, probably just 1.
Just one twinkle and 6 because that's
Roughly.
Okay.
And then, that's 21 pieces a week, so even once they're on Gossec, that means that if they do 6 practices, they will practice everything twice. Bearing in mind also by this point they've been playing all of those pieces, not all of those pieces, most of those pieces they've been playing for a really long time by now.
Yeah.
Even a Swift student is going to be in book 1 for a year and a half after their twinkles. Like in my experience, most kids takes about a year to learn the twinkles.
Yeah.
And then normally for mine 2 years to finish book 1, if not longer. And bearing in mind it used to be 2 books.
Yeah.
And then, the kids of mine who are doing a year and a half per book, after that, I'm happy with that. That means, if you start when you're 4, you finish your twinkles when you're 5, you finish book 1 by the time you're 7, you're 8 and a half by the time you finish book 2, you're 10 by the time you finish book 3. You're still in primary school in book 4. Like year 6s doing sights. That I'm happy with that. Obviously there are some students who will do quicker and some who will do slower.
Yeah.
But I don't really hold with this 1 year per book because I think the quality gets lost. I don't want them just to smash out the notes. We have one teacher here in particular whose students go very fast. Well, I recently have found out that I've got lots of them in my group class. They don't do any review.
Oh.
So I'm going to talk to the teacher about that. Their sight reading is pretty dodgy. It's like, okay, so they're going really fast because they're just smashing through the repertoire. There are postural problems. This is like a traditional teacher using Suzuki repertoire, not the whole Suzuki package. So by the time they're at the end of the book, I think often also they'll have a solo, so they're going to review that piece each practice. They might be learning other pieces in their group class, maybe. They will be doing pitch and rhythm sight reading, so that takes a bit longer.
So pitch and rhythm starts when?
So the pitch starts at around Go Tell Radio Come Little Children, and then, sorry, did I say the pitch? The rhythm starts then, and then pitch, I don't really have a specific point, but quite soon after, like perpetual motion.
Sorry, so
because it's separate in this book.
Yeah, but pitch first and then rhythm.
No, sorry, rhythm first.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so they're just playing open A. Also, because they're here, they're doing music mind games.
Okay.
They know huckleberry, gooseberry, berry goose, blue, two, rests. The first time they start to sight read on open A, the only actual difference there is between what they've been doing for ages already is moving the bow to make the sound match.
Yeah.
So that is a much easier thing for them to start than reading, stepping up, stepping down, skipping up, skipping down.
Just because, because Jacqui is already very advanced. Because I was thinking on his lessons, I remember you asking him, and Noel as well, okay, can we do this? But just saying, this goes up like step up, step down.
Describing, that's what I call that, yeah.
So that can be sooner or still when, let me get this right. Rhythm will be Go Tell Trody, O Come Little Children, and pitch will be
sometime later.
Yeah. Okay.
when you think they're ready. It does depend on the child,
Okay.
but if they haven't started doing pitch by, well, let's say minuet 1, then it's going to be a really, really long time until they're putting together pitch and rhythm.
Yes.
And my ideal, which I think I might have to slightly readdress, my ideal was always that they would finish book 1 Suzuki at the same time as they finish book 1 I Can Read Music. But I'm noticing that it's
hard.
quite a tall order. I think it's more reasonable to think sort of by halfway through book 2 they'll be starting I Can Read Music book 2. But you know, when you see kids playing humoresque, they can shift, they can play in third position, they've hopefully got really great tone and intonation, and then they can't read do 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 do. You think, oh my goodness. Like, you know, you really need to be putting, they really need to be into book 2, and ideally into the grade system by book 3, even if they're only doing grade 2 or grade 3 sight reading. Okay.
But the describing situation should be like during the thing, right? Imagine
the describing, so it's a preparatory game. We're going to talk about this soon.
Okay.
I saw it on the list, I can't remember when it is, but let's focus back on the review question, but the sight reading we are going to cover soon. Again. So the sight reading, the review, so by the time you've got a student in those last 5 pieces, first of all, it depends how you teach Gossec Gavotte once they're right at the end of the book. If you are trying to approach all of Gossec in one go, the review is going to really die down because there are going to be so many boxes, which is one of the reasons I think it's really helpful to do it in two lines at a time. If, you know, this is kind of when you realise how good their review has been so far. If they've had good review practice all the way through, it's going to be easy by this point for them to play through 4 pieces really swiftly and beautifully, thinking about whatever it is that they've picked out, or keeping their bow hold right or their head position right. Quite often at this kind of level, like minuets onwards, I do a game called 5 and 5 with the students, where I say to them, okay, how many reviews are you practicing each time? And they normally say like, oh, 3 or 4. And I say, okay, how long do you think it would take to do 5? And I ask the parents as well, and they all say like 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Sometimes the children are hilarious. Oh, like an hour. So then I give them the stopwatch on my phone, and I say, okay, I'm going to play 5 pieces for you, and I go lightly row through 5 pieces, and it's under 5 minutes because they're all under 5 minutes. And then it's like 5 and 6 minutes from by the time they get to like perpetual motion. You can still do 5 pieces in 6 minutes. And so at that point I'm like, okay, so do you think, even though 8 pieces seems like a lot, do you think some practices you could do 8 pieces? Because how long is that going to take you actually? If your review has been good, if you can just play and enjoy playing through the piece, you don't have to go and check the bowing, you don't have to go and fix the problem. You know, if you can just perform those pieces basically, then great, let's just play 8 pieces, wonderful. Do 4 pieces, then do some boxes and do your working piece, and then do another 4, lovely. Then, you know, if they're at the kind of school where they might play an assembly, or they want to play, you know, like out, they want to busk on the street of the front of their house or whatever, like, you know, there are lots of situations you can say to them, wouldn't it be great if you just were able to play all of book 1? You know, some people for graduation at book 1 play the whole, like do a book recital where they have to play the whole thing. I've never had the confidence to ask my students to do that. I also feel complicated about it, especially for book 1 because it's so long and they're little. Anyway, I think it's an interesting thing, but you know, at that stage, if it's all come together well, they can do a lot of reviews quite quickly and enjoy them. And if they can't, then this is kind of where that review list, A and B list comes in. That list with the A's and B's is a way to solve a problem with review. You never need to do that if your students have kept their review in good shape their whole lives, because they won't have any pieces they can't play. They'll be able to get through. Like, remember the idea is, can you get through it roughly? Like, your bowing might be all wrong, you might be out of tune, you might forget your repeats, you know, you might be starting minuet 1 and playing a bit of minuet 2 and then finishing book 1, but minuet 1, you know, all of these things would still be an A.
Okay.
Because they're fixable in a small amount of time.
Yeah.
The B's are literally like, I cannot get through it, I don't remember how it goes, or you just play the first phrase and that's all you've got in there. And so, you know, this means that your student really has taken their eye off review completely with their parent. So I've only had to use that maybe like 3 times with students that are not transfer students from a different teacher. Because my kids do their review, because I'm one of them all. about it all the time. So I think that is, it's really helpful when that's the situation you find yourself in. But it's also a bit of a wake-up call as the teacher. You're like, okay, why have I allowed this to happen?
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think, you know, obviously there's a spectrum of brilliant practice right through to minimum. And within each family, most of the time, one practice would be on the good end, another practice would be on the poor end. You know, it's not the same each practice for most students and their families. So I think by the time you get to the end of book 1, you are hoping that they're practicing for roughly 20 minutes. You are hoping that most of that time is actually practice rather than mucking about like it was when they were 4. You are hoping that they could get 5 or 6 minimum, 7 or 8 maximum. Well, maximum obviously is the whole book, but within 20 minutes. You know, if they're playing 2 twinkles, that takes 3-4 minutes. The sight reading 3-4 minutes, that's 8 minutes. If they're practicing for 20 minutes, and they're probably doing 5 minutes on their working piece, they've got 7 minutes to do reviews. So, you know, they can fairly easily fit 6 in.
Exactly.
And if they want to do fewer than 6, then it's resistance rather than actually a problem with time. So it's either lack of focus and there's lots of mucking about, or they can't remember the pieces, so it takes them ages to play one because they have to go back and look at the book, or mum is telling them when the D2 is, and you know, all of those things. And that's when you need the A and B lists. But yeah, I think for most of the students at that level, we're hoping that they will play between 6 and 8 each practice.
That's the list thing, without doing the list like you would do it at home. It's a good one to do in group lesson, right? For memory, like the memory game. You say like the teams and then the lining up, and say who can play. That maybe would be a good thing, because if they can't play, then it will be okay, mom. Then you can put it on the bill list.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about the list is if you're going to have a full list of which pieces in the whole book or in the whole review set. So for my students, I keep them reviewing a book's worth behind where they are. So up till the end of book 1, we keep all of book 1 in review, but by the time they're on the middle of book 2, they're going from the middle of book 1. By the time they're at the beginning of book 3, they're just doing book 2. And then those pieces that we wrote on the board that are always in there anyway. So I think that the thing about the lists is you want a full list. A, A, B, A, A, B, A, B, B, B. But the idea is right that if you're playing that game and the kid doesn't know what the piece is, you would say, can you review Allegretto? Or, you know, and for lots of the students, they don't know which piece is which by name. They know how it plays. So when you do that game with the teams, it's more successful.
But if we play the introduction, instead of like saying, okay, minuet 1, but if we play the introduction and the kid knows like right
then
away,
mostly they can all play it.
Okay.
Yeah. But I was going to say it's generally more. I've just realised what I'm saying doesn't make sense. What I was going to say is they can't. There's some difference between naming the piece and being able to play the piece. So how does it work? It works normally if you say, which piece is this? You get some very quick responses. But then if you say, play Andantino,
they
don't know which one it is.
I'm like
So it's not that they don't know the names or they do know the names, because it's the same skill inverted, isn't it? It's that they find it easier to play the notes to go with the name than to find the name to go with the notes. That's interesting. I've not thought of it like that before. Yeah. Well, because that doesn't happen in the listening, and if you're not looking at the book, you know,
exactly.
if you do I think, and also I guess the other reason that works when you say the name they can play it is because that's what happens at home. The parent will say, let's play Song of the Wind, rather than which piece is this. So they could ask them more in their listening, which piece is this one?
I would have to, I don't know, for me I'll have to think of the book. If you say the notes, then I can play it, but if you say Allegretto, I have to think, top of the page.
Yeah.
It will take longer.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, it's all fine, right?
Yeah. As long as they remember it.
Yeah, exactly. It's about the playing, not the names of the names of the pieces. So are there any more questions about the review and setting?
No, that was very helpful for me to explain the parents as well.
Good. Right, let's stop that recording and have a cup of tea.